Now, G7 leaders have concluded their meeting in England, where they forged a united front on issues surrounding China. Michael Smart, Managing Director at Rock Creek Global Advisors, discusses other key takeaways from the G7 meeting, what they hope to accomplish, and how they can do it. He speaks on Bloomberg Markets, so let's take a listen.
He did. I think Joe Biden likes to say that with his presidency, the U.S. is back. And with the communique out of the G7 today, I think you can say the G7 is back as the primary forum for democracies, the advanced democracies with big economies, to take charge of setting the rules and trying to address some of the big challenges of the day, whether that's pandemic response, economic recovery, climate change, rules on technology, and human rights. And so in that sense, there was a strong sense that these values need to be leveraged to tackle these big problems in a way that the G7 has not been used in the recent past.
Can we take that into action, though? Because that's a completely different thing altogether. And the reason I bring that up is, yes, you have an agreement on paper, but you already have some disagreements. We heard from the French, we heard from the Germans, for example, not to mention, of course, directed at China, for example. And a lot of these other countries have quite a robust economic relationship with the Chinese. In what way do you think this becomes action?
You're absolutely right. That compromise is evident in this text. Most of the criticism is implicit of China, whether it comes to international financing of coal projects or unfair trade practices, or even in the area of human rights. They take a rather implicit approach. And so now the hard work really begins, where the trade ministers have to hammer out these rules about how the trading system needs to be reformed to address China's industrial subsidies, how these targets need to be hit with ambitious actions between now and 2030, especially. What actions specifically will these democracies take to address the issue of imports using forced labor coming into their markets from Xinjiang? And so while they have this strong statement of shared values, there's a lot of policy detail that now needs to be fleshed in if Biden is going to realize his goals of meeting the competition from China in all of these areas.
And which among those items, Michael, do you think is, I hate to use the phrase lowest hanging fruit, but which is the most doable? Let's put it that way.
Well, I think the Biden administration scored an early victory when it persuaded other countries to impose sanctions on certain Chinese government officials for China's policies in the Xinjiang region and the abuse of human rights, forced labor, detention camps, et cetera. So I think you will see more action on that front, which is a big priority, not only for the administration, but for the U.S. Congress. Secondly, they'll need to see more progress on something that your reporter mentioned on finance, climate finance, helping developing countries meet their targets and adapt to the challenges of climate change. So increasing both public and private financing for that purpose is also an important area of work for the balance of 2021.
And the other side of that is what does this mean for the Chinese? I mean, do they walk away, not walk away, do they look at this after the G7 and say nothing's really changed? Or do you think the group G7 has come out of this with a little bit more leverage?
I think they have come out of it with a little bit more leverage. Let's be honest, China is not showing that it is feeling intense pressure to change current policy in these areas. But this beginning of a more united front, more coordinated action on these issues will begin to apply some pressure to China. And the effects, could be diplomatic in terms of trying to maintain a sense of global leadership, but also economic, because companies right now are making choices based on the direction they see the G7 and other Western governments taking. And what will it mean in terms of foreign direct investment into China? What does it mean in terms of access to export markets? China has to take into account the fact that it's not just the United States anymore that is contemplating restrictive measures in these areas, but other G7 governments as well.